Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're over on the YouTube account, and that is right, guys. It is time for the September tier list. Now, overall, we've had a couple of additions to the tier list, which I want to share with you today. We're going to run through, and again, trying to do this kind of on a monthly basis so we can stay up to date on all of the incredible crazy amount of heroes that we have within AFK Arena. So let's hop over to Tier List Maker and check it out. All right, guys, so here we are with Tier List Maker. Now, overall, this is super subjective. Now, I say that kind of with a grain of salt, guys. There are going to be some heroes, and the way that I kind of explain it is when you look at the S-, the S, and the S+ tier, those are really the top heroes that you do want to build within AFK Arena, and you'll see a lot of utility. We'll go through the first couple top tiers. When we start getting to the lower tiers, I'll kind of pick and choose a couple heroes in there because, again, not seeing a lot of effectiveness with some of the lower tiers. And we'll also go through and I'll tell you kind of where the heroes are being used as well. So let's start off, guys, in our S+ tier. Now, first, we have the Awakened version of Belinda. She is still the strongest hero within AFK Arena. Really a primary hero to build. There is not a game mode that she is not the best in slot in the damage dealer within those different modes. And that is one of the things to really remember, guys, and recognize is when it comes to a lot of the high end game modes, that's what we're looking at. Is when you look at the Awakened version of Belinda, it is either you have her for the formations, you have her for the build, you have her for the team comp, or for a majority of the time, you're actually going with an entirely different team comp or setup at that point, which is the same with the Awakened version of Athalia, guys. Again, still a very predominant hero, does have a really strong SP effect, similar to what we see with Belinda. She really has a couple formations that are kind of built around her, amplifying the damage that we see with Rem, amplifying the damage that we actually see with a couple different heroes. Now, in addition, guys, both of those Awakened heroes are kind of the tier 2 heroes, which are the same with Matria. She is kind of the tier 2 or the second generation of Awakened heroes, which in respect, looking at some of those, like the original version of Baden. Now we know Baden is the only Graveborn that we have awakened at this point. Still fingers crossed for the Awakened version of Shamira, but he is still, again, the best in slot when it comes to that first team, usually within the Twisted Realm and the Cursed Realm, and even the Nightmare Corridor. He is still running very strong. Now, he is starting to lose a little bit of footing when it comes to the build, which is unfortunate. We've seen the same with the Awakened version of Brutus. We've actually seen some of the heroes kind of sliding down a little bit, which is the reason why, again, taking him from that S+, I'm going to put him down in the S tier because, again, it seems like he is slowly losing his footing. We've actually seen some of the Nightmare Corridor has been replaced with Crescio within there. So again, I still feel like he has an incredible amount of utility, and we're still going to have him in formations in AFK Arena for a considerable amount of time. But as we continue to get new heroes, when we get Leica, when we get the Awakened version of Shamira, so on and so forth, we are going to see these heroes slowly being returned and slowly kind of dropping down the tier list. Which is the same, guys, looking at Demia. Demia still super effective, not only in the buffing role, but as a support kind of a damage role. Does a lot of damage, but again, has a lot of mitigation and a lot of buffing within formations, putting her in the S+, which is the same with Rem, guys. Rem, of course, carrying a formation literally by herself, still does incredibly well within a lot of different game modes. And kind of the same thing. When you look at specific formations, Rem is really the primary damage dealer, which we're seeing the exact same rate here with Liberta. Primary damage dealer in a lot of different formations, has a lot of energy regeneration. The linking ability, damage is through the roof with the hero. Now looking at Grez, similar to Baden, guys, the Ulna Grez combination is not as effective that I'm seeing it as of now. A lot of players are running Ulna Baden. A lot of them are running Ulna Grez. Even looking at running Ulna together with a couple of other heroes like Ulna Rem, we see quite a bit. Ulna in the Awakened version of Belinda, we see quite a bit. So again, but I don't want you to think that us taking them down a tier or really lowering them down a little bit has a huge impact on the hero, guys, because again, the first probably 4 tiers within here are the heroes that you really do want to focus on. Now, with that being said, would I build the Awakened version of Baden today if I did not have them built, if I was a newer player to AFK Arena? Absolutely not, guys. Again, with him being the first generation Awakened hero, there are a lot of other ones that I would. And same with Matria, guys. Matria does require kind of a significant build, but we're still seeing her in a ton of combinations. I'm still seeing her run with orthos and a lot of other places. And then, of course, Ivan. A lot of players are saying, how good is Ivan? Guys, Ivan is incredibly well within formations. Again, running with Liberta, running with Rem, running with the awakened version of Belinda. He is a really damage amplification monster, has a really strong shield so you can keep your damage dealer alive. Also does provide some crowd control with the plus 30 engraving. Very strong hero to continue to build. And again, for Graveborn, I would say one of the absolute top priorities that we see in AFK Arena. Now, looking at our S tier, still have Joan of Arc. Again, when you're looking for getting her out of the shop, she is still the priority when it comes to, I believe, the Challenger store. Or no, excuse me, I believe she's in the Labyrinth store. Still a huge buffer, guys. Again, starting to see a little less play in some formations, just because since she has come out, we've had quite a few support heroes, including Liberta and Ivan, both coming out. Now, Amelia, of course, still run incredible, a lot of formations, guys. There's not a place, again, in AFK Arena that you're not going to be using her, which is the same with Ulna. Ulna is a huge priority, guys. Again, running with Ulna and Grez, running with Ulna and Belinda, Ulna and Rem. In campaign formations, we're utilizing Ulna. Multiple formations, we're using Ulna. The Treasure Scramble, even the PvP aspect, still running Ulna in a lot of different formations. Now, looking here, guys, Honesta, not seeing, again, an incredible amount of utility with her. So, I mean, I would probably even move her down here to our S-, because, again, a lot of the formations now, Honesta used to run with the Awakened version of Baden, or excuse me, with the Awakened version of Brutus a lot. And at this point, guys, Brutus, again, a lot of formations. Brutus is slowly kind of losing his grip on those formations, but still having an effective, but again, looking right now, would I build him? Absolutely not, guys. I wouldn't build him at this point. And you can see, guys, some of the Awakened heroes are slowly moving down. Now, Mishka, of course, the Wilder Tower, still seeing in formations. If you have all of the heroes built, we don't see her used as much anymore, but she is still being used as a sub in a lot of different formations. Same with Scarlet, guys. If you don't have a lot of the damage dealer built, Scarlet is still going to be a super strong damage dealer in a lot of different formations. Same with Palmer as the buffing aspect in there. I'm still seeing a lot of play within AFK Arena. Same with Lucretia. A lot of people are starting to actually discount her a little bit because she is an older hero, but as players kind of go through, she is really your second team or your third team, your fourth team. Also looking at the tower, guys, she is the driving force. Even going into 51, almost done with 51 at this point, I am still using Lucretia at a 309.60, working incredibly well within formations. Now, Neve is another one, guys, that it almost might be at the point where, again, the utility for Neve is slowly kind of falling out of formations. It is kind of what we're seeing again in a lot of different game modes. Neve is still in some of them with the Awakened version of Solus, but I feel like you might have another probably month or two before we actually see some of these heroes really dropping out. Now, of course, when it comes to the tower, when it comes to, specifically the Wilder Tower or the Lightbearer Tower, these heroes are pivotal. They are the heroes that are going to be driving the force, which again, looking at the Awakened version of Thane, he is still a driving force in the tower, still used in formations within the Treasure Scramble. There's quite a few places, again, that he is still being used, which is why I kept him kind of in the formation where he is now. Now, continuing down here, guys, Mortis, still a very strong buffer. When you look at Mortis, when you look at the twins, when you look at Liberta, very strong buffers. Even looking at Halos, guys, some of these support heroes are still the primary support when you're starting to get into multiple teams in the campaign. But when you're in the tower, also when you're in all the different game modes, again, the Cursed Realm, Treasure Scramble, Nightmare Corridor, you are running, 6 teams in there. You have to build a lot of heroes, and there are a lot of heroes to build. Same with Silas, guys. Still works incredibly well as a buffer and a support hero in there. The Awakened version of Sophia kind of is replacing a little bit the Awakened version of Solus, just because, again, it's kind of a newer, upgraded version. Does she work incredibly well? Yes, as a buff, as a support. Again, there are a lot of substitutes with some of the support heroes that you can kind of drop into formations that will still work well. And then, of course, we have Brutus, guys. Again, tower doing incredibly well. PvP aspect still does well, but again, starting to lose the footing. Now, we have Lucilla in here. Definitely in the S. Now, where we're seeing Lucia, we were originally just seeing her in the Treasure Scramble. Now we're starting to see her in a bunch of different game modes. Running, of course, in conjunction with Liberta, running hand in hand. Now in the Cursed Realm and also the Nightmare Corridor, running in, of course, doing well in the tower. I actually use her quite a bit for the Hypo Tower, works incredibly well. But again, her and Liberta is running kind of in conjunction in a lot of different formations. And I believe as they're out a little bit longer, we're going to see a little bit more run together. And then, of course, Baden, like I said, used to be the best in slot in a primary set of teams. At this point, it seems like some of the newer whale comps, this is kind of what it's based on, are starting to replace Baden. I still use him a considerable amount, but again, still same with Grez. Grez and Scarlet always went together, guys. Now we've seen Grez and a couple other heroes, kind of changing it up a little bit within the formations. So as we look at the S minus, again, these are still the heroes you want to build, guys. A majority of these heroes, again, still being used in a lot of places in AFK Arena. Even the Ainz and Albedo comp, I still do use. I was literally using it in 51 yesterday. It's still working incredibly well within the formations. Now, Mulan, of course, very strong in the PvP aspect. Not seeing her quite as much in other parts of the game. And the same with Kanisa and Rook, guys. Again, Kanisa and Rook is a hero that works incredibly well, but it seems like we're almost at the point where we might drop him down a tier because we're not seeing him use as much as he once was. A majority of the best in slot or the whale comps are not even using Kanisa and Rook anymore, which I feel like, again, as we continue to get a couple more heroes, we're going to see him coming down more. But Thiel's still being used as a buffer, as a damage dealer, still doing incredibly well. Zolrath, of course, run in a couple different formations for that delay. But overall, again, I'm seeing less and less use of a lot of these heroes. So we might have to adjust this a little bit coming on the next month. But there are a few heroes like Frampton, again, with the Mihira comp still working well. That comp is still alive and well, even running it within the Treasure Scramble. Same with Olgath down here, guys. Olgath, very similar, still being run in comps. And all three of these kind of run together, even with Aziz down here, the original version of Aziz. Still running, again, a couple different variations in those comps, still working very well. Now, the original version of Taylene, I think at this point, she's almost been completely replaced. I know running together with Orthos is what we've kind of seen. Now, Orthos, of course, has been running with a couple other heroes, including Crescio, guys. So we've seen that Crescio Orthos, so building out a big Crescio and doing an incredible amount of damage in a couple different game modes. And then, of course, the original version of Aziz, still doing well in a lot of different formations, still a driving force to build and utility within the hero. Now, Daemon is another one, guys. Again, we're still seeing some campaign formations run with Daemon. Tower, absolutely. And the reason I ranked him so high in this is the carry methodology behind him. If you're early game, if you're mid game, if you're even getting into late game, Daemon is still in formations. Even in chapter 51, I am still using Daemon in formations. Then, of course, we have Orin right here. Orin, very strong with built out. Orin is a pretty solid sub up here for the Awakened version of Thane. Again, still does work pretty well in the formation. Oden is another one, really strong sub, doing still a lot of damage in game modes. Starting to see, again, a little bit less utility with the hero, but overall still effective. Merlin, you know what? Merlin, I might even move up to the S because, again, I thought Merlin would lose a little bit more footing than he has, and unfortunately, he has not. Still doing well in formations for that mitigation, also for the survivability, where if he takes fatal damage, he can actually still survive. Now, Raku, unfortunately, again, not seeing a lot of utility in him. He used to be the primary damage dealer in the Cursed Realm, even going into some of the early Nightmare Corridor. At this point, short of the tower, I don't really use Raku for anything else because essentially Raku has been replaced by right here Trishia. We've seen Trishia just crushing damage in a lot of different game modes and requires a significant build, kind of like we've seen Raku. But again, Raku, I don't really see that much. And remember, Kren and Raku used to be really the two go-to for a significant amount of time. But now it seems like short of the tower is really the place that I'm using either of those. But as substitution heroes in a lot of different content, they do work incredibly well. Then, of course, we talked a little bit about Anasta. Again, with the build and the shielding, not seeing a lot of gameplay, and same with Rowan. As we continue to get more support heroes, as much as I love Rowan, it seems like he is having less utility within the game modes. Now, looking down at our A tier guys, these are kind of the sub heroes or the heroes that really support the other three tiers. And when you think about them big picture, a majority of these are in formations. Again, kind of looking at a lot of those sub tiers. Some of them are run kind of here and there depending on the rotation in a couple different game modes. Even looking here, guys, Peanut still runs with a couple of Wilders, including running with, again, a couple different formations, running in there with Tamaris, running in there, again, with a couple different heroes. Pharrell in there for the crowd control aspect, still the original hero of AFK Arena. Lorzen in there for the linking. Lorzen in there for the Thorn Cheese. Also damage amplification when it comes to Lucretia. We have Hodgkin in here. We have Desira in here. Again, kind of Hodgkin as a buffer, Desira as a support. And this is going to be very imperative depending on the heroes that you have built out, because this could vary greatly, again, depending on who you have. Now, Yennefer falls into the A tier as well as Guineas, and we do have Edwin. Edwin is one that I'm starting to see a little bit more play. Guineas, I thought was going into formations that I've seen every now and then. Now it's almost to the point where I'm not seeing Guineas anymore. Same with Yennefer. As much as I love the character and the hero, Yennefer seems like it's kind of a niche formation, not seeing a ton of utility there. Leonardo campaign is really the big one. We see him run every now and then with the awakened version of Belinda as a damage amplification, but again, not seeing a lot of utility within a couple different game modes. Kind of dropped out of everything except campaign formations kind of at this point. The awakened version of Taylene, Celestial Tower, that's the only place that I see her. Now, the original version of Athalia, again, I do see every now and then, but most of it is just going back to the tower. Same with Orin, same with the 5-pull of Skarath. Most of it just either goes back to the tower or goes back to the campaign formations. Now, Tamaris, he is still being run again in a couple different formations, provides a really, really strong buffer and some crowd control aspect in there, which does very well. We have Kayleen over here, again, kind of as a damage dealer within the tower, used to and did make a presence in the Nightmare Corridor for a while. In the tower, works incredibly well, but as of now has dropped out of a lot of formations, as well as the original version of Leica. Used to be really the go-to, again, for formations. Even the Invade team, and this kind of speaks to the Maulers. When you look at Honesta, when you look at the Awakened version of Brutus, when you look at Screg, starting to have less and less of a utility until we get really a hero that is going to fit the bill to bring that Invade team back, which Brutus did, and he did with a really ferociousness. He brought it back when he was introduced. He was huge. Now at this point, the power creep has kind of overtaken him. Queen, of course, part of the 5-pull. That's really all that you see her used at. Now, Rosaline, interesting enough, guys, I'm going to move Rosaline up to the S-, and the reason being the following of heroes. Now, for a majority of time, she was only following the Awakened version of Belinda, which was kind of the go-to. I've seen her actually following a couple different heroes, and she has also been following Liberta for quite a while now, that we've actually seen the ultimate ability of Liberta and her following Liberta in those formations. Again, that is kind of what we've seen. And very similar to Orthos. Now, Orthos we've seen run in a couple different formations, working incredibly well. Tarnos, of course, the PvP aspect, and then Baba Yaga. Now, going through the rest of these guys, we're just going to kind of go through them pretty quick, because a majority of these heroes are super niche in formations, possibly used in the towers, mainly used in campaign formations. But again, when you look at, the Twisted Realm, the Cursed Realm, the Nightmare Corridor, the Treasure Scramble, you're not really going to find any of these heroes that are really the B tier and below. Even some of the A tier, you're not going to see very many in there. But again, as we continue to make progression in AFK Arena, these are the heroes that do not have, again, a lot of utility in a bunch of different game modes, possibly used in niche formations. I know Ezio sometimes in niche formations, but looking at the Charmazard, again, short of campaign formations and the tower, not really going to be used anywhere outside of those game modes. Saurus, every now and then, we do find him, or he does show up in a formation. Same with Brutus with the immunity factor. Same with Estrilda if you don't have a lot of the support heroes as the buffer. She is a pretty strong buffer. Sonya kind of had a day, and then Rain seems like a lot of the formations that I've seen, or we originally seen Rain in, was the awakened version of Belinda, who has since been kind of replaced by Ivan within a lot of formations. Now, getting into the C tier, again, sort of the Thorn cheese with Pippa in here with Kelthar. Not a lot of utility with these heroes, not a lot of usage. Even going down to our D tier and our E tier right here, guys. Not a lot of utility with any of these heroes. A lot of them, people just use for fodder, use for recycling. Even looking at some of the Celestials and the Hypogens that we have in here, again, not a ton of utility short of possibly outside of the tower. But all of these guys, I would not recommend building in any aspect at this point of AFK Arena, just for the simple fact on their utility. But some of these, even the C tier, some of these are used in the tower, again, more as a filler than some of them like a primary damage dealer, just because when you start getting into 2 teams in the tower, when you start getting into 3 teams in the tower, you're going to need additional heroes built out a little bit to go ahead and build those out. Sorry, guys. So again, this will do it for the September tier list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.